Welcome to the latest Seahawks Chat Blog live stream. Rob and Robbie here to discuss the fact the Seahawks have moved to 2-0 after a victory in New England. Always going to beat the Patriots, given the history between the two teams. And Seahawks got a pretty good record against the Patriots in recent years, apart from that one bloody game. So we'll not talk about that again for the rest of this stream, I promise. We'll focus on this 23-20 victory in overtime. Apologies that this instant reaction live stream is not so instant this weekend. I've been doing the broadcast nationally over here for the Chiefs and the Bengals, which was an interesting game. But we've jumped on, Robbie, to reflect on the Seahawks when we've been able to. That is now. Look, it's a strange game. You know, when I think back to what happened in that game, there's a lot that I want to talk about. You know, there's some really good things, some things that weren't so good. But at the end of the day, Robbie, we felt that these two opening games were very winnable. They have won them all. They won them both. They've set themselves up to have a decent start to the season now at 2-0. So that's a big positive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a really, just a gritty win today, going out there and just fighting for everything that you had. This offensive line, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, it's going to be a problem. I thought, though, Anthony Bradford played a lot better than he played the first week. But just overall, I mean, 2-0, I mean, I'm really excited about it. And, you look at, you can just only hope that maybe there's just some of the learning curves and things that they're getting out of the way, and seeing how well the Cardinals play today. If they continue to play like that, and then the Seahawks can have that sort of momentum and success as they go forward in their second year as well. I just feel pretty good about where we're at with this team, and DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigma just, both over 10 plus catches today. I mean, just all around, Geno, I think, played lights out. Just that offensive line, really the only thing that I would actually even be super concerned about.
My big takeaway from it, Robbie, was that was an excellent game from Geno Smith. And, he put the team on his back, because in that second half, I thought it was a really poor second half, to go in at half time with a lead. You're feeling good. You then start the half with a good drive. I wouldn't have gone for it on fourth down when they did. Look, I know it's second guessing it. If they convert there and end up getting a touchdown, no one's going to ever talk about that. But I think in that kind of a game where it was just that it was always felt like it was going to be close. And I don't think you turn down points in that situation, but they did. And then after that, I'd already kind of preemptively thought, what am I going to say on the stream in a few hours' time, Robbie, which was that we just got whipped in the trenches. And I was feeling really down, towards the end of that second half. Because I was watching, I was preparing to go on air, and I was thinking, it bothers me that the Seahawks are getting whipped up front on both sides of the ball in this fashion. I kind of hoped that the defensive line would be better than this, because we know the offensive line's it's not going to be a strength of the team, but they've given up 185 yards. It had some pressure on Jacoby Brissett, but it didn't feel particularly consistent. When he got out of the pocket, he was able to make things happen. For some reason, Hunter Henry turned into Rob Gronkowski in this game. And it made me feel a bit down. It made me it gave me a dose of realism that there's still a long way to go. And just as I was resigning myself to losing the game, it felt like they found a way to win. And I put that solely down to Geno Smith, frankly. I know the defense got some stops, which they had to do at the end, which is really good from them. So kudos to them for that. But I don't think you win this game without Geno Smith, without his throws. He had a few drops that did not help on the day, which would have given him an even better day. And although he's not had a 4-touchdown game, he's only had the 1 touchdown there, Robbie. I think really he was Seattle's MVP. I don't think they have any chance of winning this game if it wasn't for him. So that was my main takeaway, was that Geno Smith played an exceptional game of football.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Zach Charbonnet got 14 carries. That Geno Smith threw the ball 44 times. I mean, it absolutely was on his shoulders. And he's playing with an offensive line that just, didn't give him a ton of times. And you're right. I forgot about some of those drops because they were super frustrating. I've seen this out of Noah Fant, and maybe you remember this or maybe you don't, but I feel like there's been a couple of times in the last 2 years that we've had him that he just has some weird drops. And again, today he had a couple drops that was like, what the hell? that was, I could have made that catch. And so there's a couple of times it's just like, there a lot of drops today, and I'm sure they'll clean that up. But like, I think it's just crazy that he could have had a much better day going forward. And yeah, and you're right about that fourth down call. I agree. I don't think I would. I will say though, I kind of like the aggressiveness. I agree with you on taking the points, but I do enjoy the aggressiveness a little bit because if any other time we would have never gone for it with Pete. And so for me, I kind of enjoy the ballsy like let's just try it. So
Yeah, I share a bit of that as well, Robbie. I think. Do you know what my main issue is with it? I think probably I should have gone with this angle rather than the one that I did. It was the play call. If you're going to go for it, I think you need a better play call than that. It felt like a really slow developing run, on fourth down. In that situation, to sort of, Geno Smith, I'm trying to remember it. He handed it, he turned, he hands it off to Charbonnet. Charbonnet's a long way back from the yard that he needs to get to. And it just felt so slow. It was so slow that I actually had time to think in my head, this is going to be a play action. Then Geno's probably going to bootleg out. And he's either going to run for a first down or he's going to throw it to someone who's like peeling across like a tight end. But he didn't. He handed it off, and it gave the defensive line and the linebackers so much time to sort of read, react, get into the backfield, shut down Charbonnet. So I think the play call more than anything was my problem there, rather than actually the decision to go for it. I tend to agree with you. I have no issue with being aggressive in that situation, but it didn't matter in the end. Geno Smith got the job done. Really good drive at the end to set up for the field goal. I'm glad they didn't sort of muck about there. They got on with the field goal. Well done to Jason Myers for kicking it. Really highlighted Geno Smith there, but you're right. Jackson Smith-Njigba, career day, 12 catches, 117 yards. DK Metcalf, 10 catches, 129 yards. The big touchdown, 56 yards very early in the game. Noah Fant, who you touched on there, Robbie, for me is just, for some reason, it's just been a major tease ever since he came into the league. We're talking about a top 20 pick here. And in Denver and in Seattle, has always kind of flirted with being good, but never actually achieves it, which is frustrating because he's got everything. He's got the agility test and he's got the athleticism that you would hope to see from a really dynamic tight end. And so watching that today, Robbie, I kind of wonder, is it ever going to happen for him? Is he just never going to quite reach the levels that he was capable of coming out of Iowa? But we'll see. Still a lot of football to be played. It is just one game. You do also wonder a little bit if there's just going to be enough targets for everybody, because you've got Fant. We've found this in the past. Fant can't catch every pass if you're going to, really feature Jackson Smith-Njigba as they did today. DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith-Njigba had 22 catches between them. And then Tyler Lockett ends up sort of missing out a little bit. 2 catches for 15 yards. Noah Fant, 1 catch for 14 yards. Defensively, what did you make of everything? Because, that run defense, not good. But then, I did think there were other aspects of their performance from it, especially at the end when they tightened things up, which were critical. So it was kind of a mixed bag from the defense. But, they kind of just hung on, didn't they? They made enough plays on the day to give them a chance to win.
yeah, I mean, the run defense was definitely frustrating. I mean, Antonio Gibson was just, I felt like every time he touched the ball, I thought he might score the way he was running. He ran really hard today, man. I was really impressed by that guy. But, there was just a lot of like more missed tackles than anything, kind of weird angles. And those are the kind of things that really bothered me and things that I think we've seen prior in the past. Last week, we talked about how they were wrapping up a lot and, things that they just looked better on defense, like they were gang tackling. This didn't seem to make the stops when they needed to, and were just in the wrong spots. I'm not super worried about it. I think ultimately they got it. Obviously they got the job done. But again, that's concerning if that's going to be something that we need to look at, going forward throughout the season.
Got a couple of super chats. One which is going to put a cat amongst the pigeons. I don't know if that's a saying that you have in America, but it's a very famous British saying for saying it's going to kick up a hornet's nest, essentially. So we'll get to that in a second. But keep your super chats coming. Do you know, Robbie? This week I went back to my old friends. I can't remember what the podcast called. It's the one that's like, I think it's either the Locked On one, or maybe it's the Sports Illustrated one from the Broncos guys. Because I really wanted to see how they responded after the Wheaton Fox. They seem like nice guys. I'm not criticizing them. They seem perfectly nice, good Denver fans. They're not, hyperbolic. They don't say silly things. They're just fans. And you can't they're just being fans. But they were really optimistic ahead of the Seahawks game. Like, Bo Nix is going to do this, Bo Nix is going to do that. And of course, he was awful. So I went back to it this week and they were kind of going, well, he was awful, but he'll show him against the Steelers. Like, the Steelers game, that's it. He was awful again today. But my word, I'll tell you something, Robbie. The super chats that were flying in, it was like $50, $50, $50. I was like, wow. Like, clearly, there's a lot of people in Denver who like
The
fake
positivity.
news
That's
of
right.
Bo Nix. Like,
Yeah.
So, great. I don't know, maybe we should pick a player, Robbie, and just say he is the best. Like, Tyrese Knight is going to be the next Bobby Wagner. Like, if we could just say that every single stream, then maybe the super chats will come flying in.
That's funny.
Anyway, we have got a couple and very generous ones as well. Swine Flu says $10. Thank you for that. Geno had almost no help today. You don't give up points on the road and go for it there, especially when your guards are the worst in the NFL and your running back, your top running back is out. We're lucky to be staring at 3-0. Now, look, I tend to be more positive. I think that last sentence, we're lucky to be staring at 3-0. I also think that if they'd have dropped the Broncos game, that would have been a huge gaffe from everybody concerned. And in this game, I did think in the second half that the Patriots deserved to win. But by the end of it, and having seen how their final drive ended, and then the Seahawks coming back and getting the field goal, and then obviously the stop in overtime, and then I think the Seahawks snatched it away. So I don't think they're lucky to be staring at 3-0, Robbie. I think this is a hard-earned road win against a team who I thought were going to be awful this year. And the Patriots and fair play to Jared Mayo, because people have written them off big time. And he has got that team fighting and clawing in a way that Bill Belichick couldn't do in the post-Tom Brady era in New England. They are a tough opponent. They went and took it to Cincinnati last week, who should have beaten the Chiefs this week. They are going to be a tough out for anybody playing this way, Robbie. So to escape with a road win, I don't think anybody should be saying things like, we're lucky to be staring at 3-0. You've got to go and earn a win like that, and they did.
Yeah, it was a gritty win, as I was saying earlier. It's just you go in and it's a hard-fought game on the road, early start time, and you go on, you grind out a win, and you feel good about it. I mean, it wasn't the prettiest game by any means, but hey, man, you take a win. You're not going to look back at the end of the season and, be different if we lost it. But I don't think we're lucky. I just think, we are lucky with some of the opponents we're playing. But you're right about the Patriots, man. Like, Jacoby Brissett came to play today, and you just wouldn't have thought about that. You just think this is an easy win. But Mayo's got his guys playing really, really hard, and this is a team that really looked like they came after us today, and it was blow for blow for a little bit especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, I'll take it as a win for sure.
Yeah, all I could think about with the Patriots was if Drake May works out, they've got a heck of a team. Because they've got. I know the offensive line's it's not great. But they got 180 rushing yards today. So they did something right against, I think, a good defensive line. If Drake May works out for them in the long term, and if they can get a couple of good receivers, the Patriots could get good quite quickly with that setup, because they played very tough today. And nobody in Seattle should be taking that for granted. Look, if your expectation is the Seahawks are going to sort of just waltz over opponents like this, and that you're waiting for the close games to happen against, let's say, the Detroit Lions or the Niners or something, then you're not being realistic. This is a new staff. It is still a young team. Wins like this are par for the course in the NFL. Like, you are going to have games like this all the time. And let's just remember, the Ravens lost to the Raiders today at home. Like, the Cowboys got the doors blown off by the Saints. But quite a hilarious result. I haven't even brought up the most hilarious result of the day yet. That's coming. But that will come a little bit later in the stream. These are tough, hard-earned wins, and that was a really good win. So appreciate the super chat, Swine Flu. I think there is a nugget of truth about taking the points and that Geno had no help, but I do think we should be a bit more optimistic than we're lucky to be potentially 3-0, which, of course, still got to beat the Dolphins next week to get there, but with no Tua Tagovailoa, that might, and no really good backup on that roster for the Dolphins, that's a very different game than the one we probably would have anticipated a couple of weeks ago. Right, now here's Mike's super chat. Look, Mike, really appreciate the $19.99. Appreciate all the super chats and the support for the channel, because it just helps us make things better. But I am going to disagree with Mike, and I hope he takes that in the spirit that it's intended. He says Geno only has 2 touchdowns in 2 games, both wide open guys in broken coverages. That's concerning. I'm going to stop there and just answer that bit first. There is nothing, let's be clear, nothing concerning about anything that Geno Smith has done in these first 2 games, short of perhaps the start of the game against Denver. But after that, he had no help, no offensive line, and he, along with the running game, got the Seahawks out of a hole last week and did nothing wrong after that initial interception. He had a good game last week. I think he had a great game this week. So focusing on box scores and how many numbers are in that TD column will be a huge mistake, Mike, and to anybody else who's feeling that way. Like Geno Smith put the team on his back in New England and won that game. There is a danger that people who, there are a bunch of people out there, Robbie, who go over the top with Geno Smith. And it gets a bit tiresome. But there are also people out there who I think are just too focused on what comes after Geno Smith, that they're not prepared to just call a spade sometimes and say, the guy had a great game. Now, if he doesn't have a great game next week, we'll say so on this stream. He had a great game today, Robbie, and we just need to acknowledge that. Forget how many TDs he got. Forget the nature of the TD. Geno Smith was bloody brilliant today. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying he didn't miss any open guys or anything today. There may have been opportunities to maybe put the ball in the end zone a couple more times, but he did what he could with what he had in front of him. And I think he did a great job today. I think he was really, really good. And, he threw the ball 44 times compared to 14 rushes. I mean, not much more to say about that, really. I mean, I'd love for him to see him throw, 4 TDs and, had that been up there, but, that's tough to do, and this defense came to play. So, he did really well for today. 327 yards. It's pretty good.
Not a bad day, that.
Yeah. And again, some people are saying 6 drops. Like that's
Yeah.
a lot of drops. He could have had even more yards and maybe even more touchdowns if people had dropped those passes. So.
Yeah, I think we just need to say that he played winning football today. A quarterback's not always about look across it. Do you know Patrick Mahomes? He had 150 yards today. He had 2 interceptions. But when he needed a drive, they got a drive. Then a bit of luck with a flag late on, but it's winning football. I think there's only 3 quarterbacks who threw over 300 yards this weekend, Robbie. That's including Thursday Night Football. Jared Goff, who threw 2 interceptions, 0 touchdowns, and they lost. And the other one was Brock Purdy, who threw one touchdown. I think he had 2 interceptions and a fumble, or 1 interception and a fumble, and they lost. So, stats, they don't really mean anything all of the time. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. On this occasion, Geno Smith played winning football. Then the other point that Mike's made, I'm going to disagree with this as well. Zach Charbonnet simply isn't fast enough to be successful in the NFL. Need to give the other running backs a chance. I would also disagree with that, Mike. I think the problem the Seahawks have is that last week they had a lot of success running to the perimeter, Robbie, with Ken Walker, who's very good. That's the kind of runner he is. We've seen this at Michigan State and in Seattle. Ken Walker likes nothing more than to get outside or reverse back on a run to get into space and almost turn runs into kick returns or screens. That's how he plays. And last week, the Seahawks had most of their success in the running game, I think, running to the outside. Zach Charbonnet is a between the tackles running back. And the Seahawks, I don't think, did a very good job at all today blocking for an in between the tackles running back. They got no push. It was often getting hit, without any kind of ability to push the pile. I think he got what was there. Now, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but I think it's really harsh to point the finger at Zach Charbonnet today. I don't know what you think, Robbie, rather than the offensive line, who just didn't do a good enough job run blocking for me.
Yeah, for me, it's the offensive line. It starts with there. I mean, we've seen Charbonnet hit top speed before. I mean, he ran a 4.5 at the 40-yard at the combine. I mean, he's fast enough. I just think the offensive line today was really, really bad. I mean, they just can't block. I mean, there's a couple of times where they just were already in the backfield by the time he was getting the handoff, touching the ball. So not much for him to do. And then probably a good reason why they only ran the ball 14 times today.
Just to put a final point on the Geno Smith thing as well. I don't know who Jacob Gibbs is. He's got a sizable following on Twitter, 47,000 followers. He says I think he basically writes a fantasy football newsletter. Well, he's put this here. He says early charting as Geno Smith with 0 off-target throws in this game. If true, that will be the first time since 2021 that a QB hit the following threshold: 40 plus dropbacks, average depth of target of 8+ yards, and 0 off-target throws. As I said, we don't need to, twist this into something it isn't. Appreciate the super chat, Mike, but Geno Smith had a great game today. Let's just say it as it is. This one from Zorn76. Big thank you for the $20, Zorn. Massively appreciate that. 50% of Circa Survivor contestants are gone after 2 weeks. The NFL is weird. I'm grateful to be 2-0 with a brand new regime that's playing chess instead of checkers with our opponents. Go Hawks. I am not in a Survivor League this year, Robbie. I don't know if you are. But it's probably for the best, because I probably would have gone with the Bengals last week against the Patriots and would have lost then. And I probably would have gone with the Ravens against the Raiders today. If that they were the sort of the two that stood out to me as like, you're going to go for that. If you're going to bet, like I did 2 parlays, 2 accumulators, and they both will have had the Ravens on there winning, and they've been very unsuccessful as a consequence. It is a weird start to the season. We've had injuries to big name players. We've got what looks like almost I've been writing about this week, Robbie, a renaissance of the running game. I think teams are looking at their offensive lines and going, we aren't very good at pass protection because most teams aren't. So let's run the ball a bit more and take the pressure off the quarterbacks. I can sense that is happening a bit more this season. We're not seeing 400, 500-yard passing games, 3-4 touchdowns, at least in the first 2 weeks. I get it's still early. We're not seeing that. Passing touchdown leaders over the last few years, Robbie, the average has dropped significantly in the last few years from around 43 touchdowns to just over 40. Now, it seems as if the league is just switching a little bit, and you've got to be smart. You've got to play, you've got to play well in the trenches, and you've got to play winning football. I know that's kind of like a bit of a cliche. We define winning football. It's a lot of ways. It can be passing. It can be running. It can be good defense. It could be good special teams. It can be capitalizing on turnovers. There's lots and lots of different ways to win a game. And the fact is the Seahawks have found 2 different ways to win a game so far, Robbie.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not in a Survivor League, by the way. I'm not this year. I do have Alvin Kamara though in my fantasy football team, so that was a great day for me. But yeah, no, I totally agree with what you said.
Yeah, I also I'm in 3 leagues. I used to be in 7 fantasy teams. It was too much, Robbie. It was like a full-time job to keep up to date with all the fantasy teams. And the other bad thing about having 7 teams was that you would have a player in one league, be like, yay, like Alvin Kamara scored 40 points. And then you'd find you were playing against him in another league. You're like, oh, Alvin Kamara scored 40 points. You can't enjoy it. So I've kind of limited it down to 3, and I'm really tempted to get it down to 2. There are 2 leagues that I'm in that I have to stay in with a bunch of friends. But the other one, I joined randomly in 2009. It was like a Yahoo thing. Do you just want to join a league for the sake of joining another league? Like, yes. I've never met any of the people in that league, but it's been going since 2009, and I've stayed loyal to it all the way through that. But that one might go by the wayside as well, as I try and limit the number of fantasy teams I have. One more for now. Keep the super chats coming, though. Really appreciate them all. Thank you for supporting the channel. Really appreciate it. Let's celebrate a win with some more of these. Troy says, appreciate all the content you guys put out, and thanks. Thank you, Troy. Appreciate the message. Appreciate the super chat. 690. Love it. Appreciate all of those. Keep those coming in. We'll be interested to see, like someone has said, how did Charles Cross grade this week? We're not going to find that out until tomorrow. But given that he was the top rated offensive tackle in the league via PFF last week, Robbie, I am intrigued to see it. Although, to counter some of that, I'm a bit worried for PFF, Robbie. This is a totally random thought that I had earlier today, and I'm going to get the numbers up for you. Okay. So, spoiler alert is that I've got my scouting notes from the weekend's college football. I spent all day watching the games. And I thought Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback, had a very good game against South Carolina. Now, he threw a horrible interception late in the game, but he came back and he won them the game. But he was fantastic. Anyway, I had a look on PFF today, and they gave him a grade of 65.1, which is, I think, below average. They went to South Carolina in the SEC on the road, played a great defense. He had amazing throws. Wait till you see the article, like the screen grabs, the videos I've made from this today, Robbie. Like amazing, like NFL throws, just like unbelievable. Like LSU, no chance winning that game without Garrett Nussmeier. And they give him a 65.1 grade. And then I have a look. Cam Ward got given a 90.6 grade because he threw a bunch of touchdowns in a 62-0 hammering of Ball State at home. Like when at least two of the touchdowns, because I was watching it live for a bit, were just extended handoffs. He only completed 67% of his passes against Ball State, but they gave him a near perfect grade of 90.6. How is the difference between those two? Like the Garrett Nussmeier LSU win is so far better than the Cam Ward Ball State game. How can there be such a disparity between the grades? So when I look at PFF, Robbie, I know they've lost a lot of their sort of media personalities to like other organizations. I do wonder if they've lost a few of the people who actually knew what they were doing in terms of analyzing the games as well. So I am going to take it with a pinch of salt this season. But the line did not play well last week, and Laken Tomlinson and Bradford, I think, had okay grades, and Charles Cross had an elite grade. I'm fascinated to see how they graded the offensive line this week. Because did you get any sort of perception on how Cross played in this game?
No, I mean, going off strictly eye test, I think Laken Tomlinson needs to be benched immediately. I think he played like trash again today. And Charles Cross, I don't think he gave up a sack or anything like that. And so for me, as long as like he's keeping the blind side, protected, I'm happy with it. And I think he played pretty well. But again, I do think Bradford played well again, or played better today than he did last week. But again, I actually think Connor Williams had a really bad game at the center position too. Again, it's a new line. They haven't played with each other very long. Hopefully that they can start to, develop some chemistry together. Because it's going to be really concerning if it's going to continue to look like this. But I think they're going to get better. But yeah, from just pure eye test, I don't know about the PFF scores. I would say he played pretty well today.
The other bugbear that I want to raise today, Robbie, is that Byron Murphy was given half a sack for, I always kind of get annoyed by that. Like Byron Murphy earned that sack. Like he got into the backfield, he shut down the play, and then like Leonard Williams right at the end kind of joins in and gets half a sack for that. Like so Leonard Williams ends up with 1.5 sacks. Byron Murphy only has half a sack, but that was good to see from him. Boye Mafe's got another sack today, Robbie. He's now 2 for the season. Like the one thing about Boye Mafe, this is the thing with him, is he collected sacks very well last season and had that run, didn't he? It was like 7 or 8 games, wasn't it, with a sack in every game, and that's really good. But could he? Like, I get the feeling he's going to be one of those players, and I hope he proves me wrong, that collects sacks quite regularly, but you never really feel he's a game-changing presence, Robbie. Like, I don't feel that with him, but he does sort of every game find a way to make a play to get a sack, and that's better than nothing. But can he elevate and become like a dominant edge rusher is what I want to see.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I actually felt a little bit differently today. I literally thought Maffey made a couple of plays on third down that stopped them from, getting first downs and such. And I just thought, man, he came to play. And I felt that early on. I don't know if like later on it was a little bit different, but like early on, I had that feeling like, wow, he's actually out here like being a difference maker, which is what I want to see out of him. Also, Derek Hall, I think, had a pretty good game today as well. So, but yeah, I think that, that's something to monitor for as well. Just kind of see how he progresses. But I think overall, I think he has that ability, but is he going to be one of those players that just frustrates you? Like he has that potential, but just isn't getting it. Yeah.
I'll go back and watch the I didn't see, like, as I was preparing to go live on the radio nationwide over here, the second half I was kind of watching it and then working and then watching it and then working it. So maybe I just missed a couple of pressures there from Maffei, which has sort of made me sort of think that way about him. But I'll go and check that out again and see if my opinion shifts.
Yeah, do so. And I will say, when he went out today, I was severely concerned about our defense when he went out. So,
well, that's it. They've not, with Taylor going, Gibson's not really done anything yet. You kind of wonder, can they survive without Maffei and Nwosu out? And probably not. So fingers crossed. I think he said his knee, like banged his knee or something. It didn't sound too serious. Like, you know, when something's possibly serious in Matt Minogue, he just won't say anything. So the fact that he actually named that he had a knee issue there. He's got a new word, Robbie. He was calling everybody dynamite after in his
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah, he was a dynamite player. Yeah,
he dynamite play. He played like dynamite today.
Dynamite, yeah.
And then there was another one where he nearly said it again, and he just checked himself. Oh yeah, he had a great game. Like he said, he thought he could say anything. I've said dynamite too many times now.
So I'm glad you picked up on that because I did too when I was watching. That was pretty funny. Yeah.
I mean, I was laughing all the way home, quite frankly. You know, when it was good because I did the game, the Chiefs game, and then I was, oh yeah, the Seahawks won. That's really good. And then I also remembered like the other results in the NFC West. Now, like, the funniest one for me is not the fact that what has happened to the Rams. Now, in fairness, I am going to sort of mention this a little bit, Robbie. I was not on the Rams. Like I said in a couple of streams on my own. I think I did a video about I did an NFC West prediction and kind of poured a bit of cold water on the Rams. People can go and check that out. I did a thing with Brian on his channel at Hawk Blogger. I just wasn't feeling the Rams. Like they just don't. There's a few things there. They've lost Aaron Donald. They obviously still have good players. But I thought they were a little bit overrated for where they are. Now, having said that, Robbie, I didn't expect them to lose 41-10 to the Cardinals. Now, I also think what's going to happen now is I think people are going to overreact to the Cardinals winning 41-10 because the Rams had a few injuries. It just sounds as if the Rams have had a crap preparation for this game. And it was the weirdest game because they only had, I think, one turnover, the Rams. And usually when you lose a game 41-10, it's like a pick six and then another pick six and then a fumble, you know, stuff like that. It wasn't. It was just the Cardinals playing very, very well. Kyler Murray, 3 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr. getting a couple of touchdowns. You know, they played very well. But before I get on to the funnier game of the weekend, you know, I don't know if you saw any of that game or you just saw the score. You know, how do you feel about that? The Rams are now 0-2. So the Seahawks already have a 2-game lead over the Rams. And as I pointed out in my prediction thing and with Brian, you know, the Rams are quite lucky to make the playoffs last year. They had I think they could easily been 3-7 if they'd lost to Seattle in LA. And off the back of that game, they won a few close games against not great opponents, and that got them into the playoffs. Maybe the reality is this, that they weren't that good. Now they don't have Aaron Donald. Now they're 0-2.
Yeah, I don't really know how good the Rams are going to be. Like I was a little higher on them, but I will say I'm not going to undervalue the Cardinals right now. I think they played really hard last year, which was a surprise. They didn't win a lot, but they played really hard. I think this is a team that's got a lot of potential, and they came to play, and I think they've got a lot to prove, and they're playing really hard for. I forget the coach's name now. I was just slipping my mind, but they're playing really hard for him, and I like what they're doing.
I can't remember the coach. What's his name? Jonathan Gannon. You know, but he is a forgettable coach, isn't he? He kind of looks like one of us. Like he could join us on a stream and talk about the NFL. Like Jonathan Gannon is his name. But you know, great. He's done a good job. Like when he took over last year, you know, everyone was kind of expecting them to be the first overall pick, and now they're probably going to be an outside. Well, they played the Bills. They've blown the doors off the Rams. Maybe they could be an outside bet for the playoffs, maybe not even an outside bet. And their next game is Detroit at home. So that is next week in the NFL. Fantastic. We've got the Cowboys against the Ravens, like both teams desperate for a win in that game. And then we've got the Lions who need to bounce back from their loss to Tampa Bay. And we have the Cardinals, you know, hosting them. Like that is a fascinating game. And off the back of that, the Cardinals then play the Washington Commanders to get 3 straight home games for some reason. And then they play at the Niners and at Green Bay. So that is going to be a really interesting team, like Arizona, to follow over the next few weeks. Okay.
And I watched most of that game. I think they're legit.
You think they're legit?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and I think Kyler Murray is playing some of the best football.
He's a good player. Like people have forgotten that Kyler Murray is a good player because of the contract thing where they said he's not allowed to play computer games or something, or they were going to give him an SAT test after every week to see whether he's actually done his homework. Like it was whatever it was. Like that kind of put a dampener on things, and the injuries. And you know, he's not the greatest body language guy, but then Geno isn't at times. Like so, but he's a really good player. Like he went first overall for a reason. and he was unbelievable at Oklahoma, and he is an unbelievable talent. So we will see how their season goes on. Now, I want to get onto this, though, Robbie. The other team in the NFC West that we haven't mentioned are the San Francisco 49ers, who, looked scary against the Jets, like scary good, like the Niners have looked for a while. But then today, they didn't look very good. They looked as if they were lucky to lose by 6. Like Fred Warner made an incredible play on the goal line, which should have been a touchdown for Aaron Jones, I think it was, who fumbled. Yeah, it was Aaron Jones who fumbled it. They were going in there, the Vikings, to really extend the lead and make that quite a handsome scoreline for the Vikings, who are starting Kevin O'Connell's a bloody coach, by the way. Like all he did last year with no quarterback, and then this year with Sam Darnold, has got them to 2-0, destroying the Giants and now beating the 49ers. Heck of a coach, Kevin O'Connell. But they lost Justin Jefferson in the game, still found a way to win. Jefferson had a ridiculous 97-yard catch and run. And although the Niners, when you look at the Niners' numbers offensively, they're 100 yards rushing for Jordan Mason. Brought Purdy 319 yards. He had 1 interception, but he had a touchdown as well. There's not a lot wrong there. They had 4 sacks. Nick Bosa got a couple. So a lot of the things that you would usually see that would lead to a Niners win, and yet they've only scored 17 points, Robbie. They've lost 23 points to 17. They're 1-1. And any time the Niners drop a game, it should be enjoyed.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree. Again, not to rain on the parade. I know it's early in the season, but there's going to be games that teams drop that. But anytime the Niners lose, I totally agree. Let's rejoice in that, because not a team I hate more.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about the NFC West, because the other teams will look at Seattle and go, "Oh, 2-0, they've had a good start." But the Seahawks haven't destroyed anybody like the Cardinals have. Equally, the Lions might go, "Well, okay, today was bad, but we gave the Lions a good game and could easily have won that." Like it does feel as if can the Seahawks get a 3-0 and beat a demoralized Miami? Like it's going to be interesting next week to see how the Dolphins respond to what happened to Tua. Will it like really energize them? Like, okay, let's win one for Tua, that kind of thing. But if they've got, what's his name? Skylar Thompson?
Thompson, yeah.
Every time I think of Skylar Thompson, I think of the mum from Breaking Bad, who's called Skylar. Like, I expect her to be running out there and playing quarterback. Like, this is the expectation of him coming to Seattle and winning should be low, but they do still have Tyreek Hill. They still have Jaden Waddle. Their offensive line has not been good enough. They're missing players on defense still. It's a long way to come from Miami to Seattle. Hopefully, it absolutely pisses it down and it's freezing cold. The antithesis of the weather in Miami, essentially, which would help the Seahawks there. I just think it's a game where, could you put a strong performance in, Robbie? But even then, would people just go, "Oh, Skylar Thompson was playing"? It doesn't matter. Do you need to see the Seahawks have a really good win in order to sort of feel really good about their chance in the NFC West?
No, I don't think so. I think I would like to see all 3 sides of the ball play really well at the same time, and really have it be something where they put a whole game together. I don't think it doesn't mean dominating. Like, they don't need to come out and win 41-3 or anything like that. But or convincing win over some team. I don't know who that would be, though. You can only play the teams that are on your schedule, and you can't account for injuries, because that could happen to us too. So, I don't know much about this Skylar Thompson guy. I don't know if he's going to come out and light it up. I don't know anything about him. So, he come out, play really well, and then you could be pissed, be like, "Well, we lost to a guy who's a career backup or didn't know anything about." Anything could happen in the NFL. I don't know if I necessarily at this point need to see it. Maybe in a few weeks I might need to, but right now it's still early. I'm still just enjoying the fact that we've got a new regime. Everything. I feel like when I watch the games now, everything is just more exciting. Like, I'm like, this is a new defense. This is a new look on the offense. You get to see different routes and I like different blitz packages, and I get more excited just because it's something new. So I'm still just enjoying that.
Yeah, it does look new. I think it's noticeable on the defense how different things are. I know, although it didn't look very different when the Patriots were running all over the Seahawks, that looked very much like Pete Carroll. But at the same time, it also did look different because they are asking different questions, and it's a work in progress still. That's absolutely clear. I don't think that excuses some of the poor run defense today, but you would hope that they're going to get better. And look, we're going to have some big tests. Like I think the Lions game is going to be a needed test in week 4 because they gave up 185 yards rushing today. When I suspect the game plan will have just been don't let the running game beat you. Make Jacoby Brissett beat you, even though I think he's a serviceable, bridge quarterback. If that's probably the best description for him rather than a backup. They still gave away all those running yards and almost lost the game as a consequence. So yes, what was the other point I was going to make on this? Oh yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say. Do you not think it's amazing, Robbie, that the Dolphins one? And no disrespect to Tua Tagovailoa, one that the Dolphins committed as much as they did to Tua and did not go maybe year to year with him, given his history of concussions and injuries. And 2, that, okay, you've committed to him, but how have you not got a better backup than Skylar Thompson? Don't want these to be famous last words, but do you see what I mean? Like you've got a quarterback who's missed time. How have they not got somebody who is experienced, who could come in if needed and win a game of football for you? Because if Tua doesn't play again this year, what's the Dolphins' record going to be? Like, how have they not? If you have a quarterback who has had concussion history, who has had injury history, are you really going to put yourselves in a position where in week 2, a hard hit and a head injury is going to wreck your season? Like, if Geno Smith went out tomorrow, you've got Sam Howell. He's played a season's worth of NFL football as a starter. How are the Dolphins trotting Skylar Thompson out there? To me, that's just if I was a Dolphins fan, I'd be throwing something at the screen. I don't know why I'd throw it at the screen because the GM's not on the screen, but I would be certainly launching something the GM's direction if that was the case. Anyway, Robbie's having an embrace with his son, which is nice. We'll let Robbie crack on with that. If you've got a super chat, send them in. We are not going to do an especially long stream today, given how late it is here and how I've been on air for the last few hours. But if you have a super chat, you want to send something in, if you want to make a comment, if you want to have a say on anything like that, then feel free. Robbie, have you got a quick thought on that, like on the Dolphins not having a better backup? I'm glad they don't, but still, I find it unbelievable that teams run themselves this way.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a little shocking that they weren't prepared, but again, I don't know much about Skylar Thompson. They might really like him for a reason. They're people that Patrick Mahomes goes down and who's the old backup that they had. I mean, I know he played some, but they trusted him enough to come in, and he certainly isn't Patrick Mahomes, but he could come in and do a serviceable job, right? And so maybe they just have that feeling about him as well. I don't know much about the Dolphins, man, to be honest. I mean, other than Tua and the wide receivers and Jalen Ramsey, but there's so much that the unknown about this guy is kind of one of those things. You just don't know. They clearly trust him enough to be the backup, but it is a little surprising.
Yeah, you almost wonder why something like Jimmy G didn't end up there, given his connection to the Niners and that scheme that I almost called him Mike McDonald then. Mike McDaniel runs. A little bit surprising that. Okay, so one other thing that I picked up, Doug Kyde, who covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald, good guy. He tweeted out the Patriots offensive line allowed 16 pressures on 33 total dropbacks today. He makes a comment. That's a comment on the offensive line on the passing game, but it does just to show that the Seahawks did create a lot of pressures today, albeit against an offensive line who has the same kind of problems that ours has. Just not very highly rated. I did want to end with a quick thought on the draft, Robbie, unless we get another super chat, which chucks a question our way, is that, I've been watching the draft prospect. I don't know how much college football you've watched in the first 3 weeks, but what I would say is that I've been really disappointed, with some of the big names that people have been talking up in terms of this guy's going to go in the top 10, this guy's going to top 15. Just a lot of the guys, like the 2 LSU offensive tackles, for example, just not playing very well. The Georgia defensive lineman who everybody was sort of told, he could end up being the first overall pick. Michael Williams didn't even play this weekend because of an injury. There's a number of players. James Pierce, I think, has 1 tackle in 3 games and no sacks. Everyone was thinking he was going to be like the next big edge rusher, that he could be a prospect who could go first overall. There just isn't a lot to get excited about at the very top end of this draft. And if that remains the case in a few weeks, looking at what the options are here, Robbie, I just wonder whether it brings in how the Seahawks approach this, because I know there are certain people, like the people who've already commented on Super Chats today, who probably feel very strongly about this. I just wonder if it could open the door for them to be, at least consider being aggressive in some way, shape, or form before the deadline. A year ago, they went for Leonard Williams. But if this isn't shaping up to be an amazing draft, do they think about what can we do to improve this team now? And I'm not totally against that based on what I've seen so far. There are always players in every draft, in each of the first 4 rounds, that I would say I would love to be able to draft them. But the reality is, right now, there are too many players that are underperforming, Robbie, who are eligible for the 2025 draft.
Yeah, I mean, what would you like trade for? Like a guard or something? Or like, what are you thinking?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a specific position for you. I don't have a specific name for you. Last year I probably would have been able to throw out, maybe they could go and get a defensive lineman like Leonard Williams. We talked about trading for Leonard Williams before the season began. Like, could he be a player? Could you get him out of the Giants? Stuff like that. I never thought it'd cost what it did when they eventually got him, but it was not something that was completely shocking when it happened. It was not like, oh, whoa, they've done that. It did make sense that the Giants would move him, and it made sense that a team like the Seahawks would go and acquire him, just not for the second rounder. But it's like, is there I don't know. Maybe it is an offensive lineman. I don't think they'd be that costly, because who gives away offensive linemen? No one's going to trade a top offensive lineman. So if you were trading for somebody's backup or somebody that, Evan Neal, let's say, at the Giants, if they gave up on him, I don't think you'd be giving up an awful lot for that. But, who could it possibly be? Like, one of the strange thoughts I had was whether or not, Sam Howell could have some value, for teams like Carolina. He played for North Carolina, and you just wonder a little bit. I think Robbie's a little bit preoccupied at the moment. We'll come back to him in a second. If Sam Howell, and if Carolina went, well, we are giving up on Bryce Young, is that kind of a swap or something you could? I don't know. I'm not sure if that. I'm sort of just plucking names off the top of my head, but I do just wonder a little bit if they'd be open to some moves, and let's see what it could potentially be. You never know what's around the corner. The Ravens with Mike McDonald traded for Roquan Smith before the deadline. I'm not suggesting it'd be a blockbuster deal quite like that, but I just wanted to throw the thought out there, Robbie. It's just something that popped into my head as I was kind of watching it yesterday and thinking, there's a handful of guys that are playing really well. Travis Hunter's play, is unbelievable. I don't think I've ever watched a player like Travis Hunter before, getting a freaking interception and a couple of massive touchdowns in a game. I've never seen that. I do think that Malachi Starks is playing very well for Georgia, the safety. Kelvin Banks, who's playing tackle for Texas, but I think probably best kicking inside to guard at the next level. I think Quinn Ewers has played very well, but he got injured again. And that's the thing is, like, one thing we've been talking about with Quinn Ewers, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. And he isn't staying healthy. And then Shadir Sanders, Robbie, looks incredibly talented, but he's going out and, he's walking out onto the field against Nebraska, and he's giving it all this to the Nebraska players, and then just going to slap him around for 4 quarters. The whole stuff about Primes stop the band from playing after a touchdown until the stadium has played Shadir Sanders' rap track before, that has to go for, it's just absolute bollocks that I can't be dealing with. Like, football at the end of the day is still a hard-nosed game won in the trenches. Like, all this arsing about that seems to come with Shadir Sanders is a little bit off-putting, which is a shame because he's unbelievably talented. I don't think Carson Beck played very well against Kentucky. I think, and then when you look at some of these others, Garrett Nussmeier, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Brady Cook, Miller Moss. They've got something about them, but I don't think they're like, whoa, way up, top draft picks. So we'll see. But I just wonder. I mean, how would you feel if, about if the Seahawks were somewhat aggressive before the trade deadline? It'll come up quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on where they're at, right? Like, I don't want to just if we drop a couple games and we're not really in the hunt, or you just kind of know this isn't the year. Don't go be trading away pieces for nothing. Draft capital, like get younger guys in. I'd rather do that. Plus, Seahawks draft blog, we like our draft picks around here, so like we'd rather have that. But just don't get fleeced in a trade. I feel like too often. I shouldn't say that because John Snyder's made a couple of incredible trades, but I feel like there have been enough sour trades that have not really gone in our favor that we've given up too much for a player that you're just like, why? I'm not sure. I think it depends on the player, depends on the position, how I'd feel about it. And it depends on where we sit in the rankings and how we feel about, progressing further in the playoffs.
Yeah, I never thought that. Here's a name that kind of just popped into my head. I never thought they would do anything like this, but if Maffei and with Nwusu out, you just wonder a little bit. I don't know how you make it work because the guy he's already given away $8 million. Hassan Reddick with his holdout. He gave away another 800,000 today. The Jets have just lost Jermaine Johnson to a suspected torn Achilles, so they need an edge rusher badly now, and their GM and coach are in desperation mode. So I think the Jets will probably sign Hassan Reddick to whatever deal he wants this week, and that'll be done. But it does me wonder a little bit, is that something, because that won't be especially expensive. I don't know how you would get him to come and play in Seattle if he's not prepared to play in Philadelphia and New York. Teams have ways of doing things. I don't know if he would be somebody that could potentially be of interest, or if it gets to sort of week 7 and he can't, he's still not playing. He just thinks I'm done with the Jets or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? He just wants to play somewhere. But I think we're putting the cart. I'm putting the cart before the horse by talking about this. It just popped into my head this week with regards to what might happen in the coming weeks, because the draft at the very top end has been a bit underwhelming so far. Anyway, Seahawks 2-0. Thank you to everybody who sent super chats in. Much appreciated. Thank you to everybody for watching this live, especially because it's not an instant reaction stream. It was delayed. Been really happy with the number of people watching this live, even though it's been a little bit delayed. So thank you for sticking with us. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. That will include all of my drafts, sort of scouting notes. That will be up, I think, on Tuesday or Wednesday. Tomorrow we've got another stream with Jeff, where we'll be picking through the bones of this again. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the videos. And hopefully next week, we're back to usual. We'll do the instant reaction stream right after the game has finished. Give the video a like. Leave a comment in the comment section. It helps push the video forwards. Big thank you to Robbie Williams for his analysis as well. The Seahawks 2-0 and heading back home to face Miami next week. Until then, bye for now.